Welcome to the Cables to Clouds podcast. Cloud adoption is on the rise, and many network infrastructure professionals are being asked to adopt a hybrid approach. As individuals who have already started this journey, we would like to empower those professionals with the tools and the knowledge to bridge the gap.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cables to Clouds. I'm your host this week, Tim McConaughey, and with me are my beautiful co-hosts, Chris Miles and Alex Perkins. And with us this week, we have another beautiful, amazing guest with us, Andrew Brown. You probably have seen Andrew Brown on Twitter, unless you're not on Twitter, in which case you might have seen him on LinkedIn or somewhere else. But we got Andrew with us today, and go ahead and introduce yourself, Andrew, if you don't mind.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrew Brown. I create cloud certification courses. I'm the chief, we'll say education officer. I'm CEO, so it has to stand for something, for ExamPro. I run cloud boot camps. I do a lot of community work. And, you know, again, I like to create a lot of cloud drama. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll be tapping into the spicy takes tonight from you, Andrew. So actually, the reason we brought Andrew here is because we wanted to talk tonight about cloud, like education, training, certification. So he seemed like kind of the perfect guest to talk about that. You know, a guy who creates, you know, certification and exam material, has his own platform and everything. So I guess we'll just jump right in and we'll see kind of where the conversation takes us. So recently on Twitter, I know that you had mentioned, you know, kind of how the cloud certification, some of the providers, you know, have been kind of circling the wagons on a lot of the certification content and kind of bringing it more in-house, or at the very least, if not bringing it in-house, then certainly not doing anything to kind of showcase other creators out there who are creating content and creating certification materials. So, I mean, I've said it, but I would love to hear it from your for your own mouth. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I recently had made a post where I was complaining on LinkedIn and Twitter saying, you know, I'm only seeing AWS only ever promote their internal content, and they're never mentioning all these amazing creators that fill all the other gaps that they're not filling, bringing all those other perspectives, and also are the folks that are probably making AWS as popular as it is, or you know, this goes the same for any provider. And I use the words, I would say that they're cannibalizing the third-party community-driven content because they are trying to drive all content through their own funnel, have 100% control of it, 100% of the narration in terms of how and what you should learn, and specifically about AWS. And it's frustrating, especially when I'm running these giant community projects like Tim, you might have heard of my AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp, where I literally spent $70,000 to $80,000 of my own money, and I had very limited support from AWS. And there were people in AWS that helped me, but it came too late. It wasn't the right resources, and even after I did it, like it was just like, okay, what's the next thing we can get from Andrew? And it was just very frustrating. And so, you know, I've been working with AWS for 6 years as a community member, trying to build inroads. And, you know, I'm getting things from other companies that I'm surprised AWS doesn't provide. And I'm not really making money. And I produce a lot of AWS content. So what gives AWS? And that was kind of, you know, the feeling that I had when I made that post.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, that's really good. You know, and you know, this particular thing we're talking about is AWS. I mean, I'm sure I can't say one way or the other if it's, you know, just AWS or other CSPs, but there's definitely a drive from the CSPs to kind of own and curate and deliver their own training content, you know, so they can have full control over it. I'm sure it probably makes it easy from a development perspective. Like they have to develop the blueprint, they have to develop the exam. And so, Also, of course, it also helps. I mean, let's not mince words here. It also helps them own the messaging, so if they're the ones making the training content, there's not going to be anything in the training content that says, hey, by the way, this breaks, or this doesn't work, or this isn't great, right? So yeah, I could definitely see that being a problem.
I would say that I think that like all the CSPs to a certain degree want to own the full pipeline, but how they go about that is completely different. Like Google's always been about having everything in their ecosystem, and not just certification content, but everything. And I always try to think of GCP as if you ever played the game Fallout, the new Fallout 4, and there's that organization that lives way under the ground, and they're
the
just
Institute.
like the Institute. They're the Institute to me. I always think of them as the Institute. So I wouldn't necessarily say, what they're doing is bad, but, they're doing the way they want to do things. And there's a reason why they're third, but, they're doing what they want to do. Microsoft, they push out content on Microsoft Learn. We know they own LinkedIn, so they have LinkedIn Learning. They have their fingers in GitHub. But, there's still room for creators like myself to interact there. And then, AWS, it's just, I don't know what's been going on, but they've been driving everything back to their platform. But again, there's just, I feel like those other ones, they're trying to do the same thing, but there's still room for me to do things. And so I'm less frustrated with them. But I would just say that I think that there is this a lack of not understanding that this community component, these other creators are the ones that are the drivers. Like you look at the GitHub certifications that came out, nobody was looking at those, and they were looking at, like, they're laughing at it because they had released 4 certs and they're all $200, and they just were not aligned whatsoever with what people wanted. Like the GitHub Foundation doesn't have any Git knowledge. Everybody wanted to get into the GitHub one because they thought there's going to be good Git knowledge in it. There wasn't. And so I had to go on the internet and go, hey, this is a problem. Nobody likes this. And I had to consolidate a ton of the feedback that I was hearing from the community. But they did change and respond to it. But I'm just saying that had they not made those changes, I don't think they would have had the traction. And had it not been for user-generated content of myself and then the other creators that did it, we wouldn't have saw that drive for that interest. And I think that, they kind of forget that there's that component to it. So I don't know. It's kind of my thoughts there.
Yeah, not to mention, I don't know if this kind of coincides with that or if this is something that you guys have even noticed, but I'm not going to name any names, but I'll say I have a lot of colleagues that I know that have eventually gone to AWS. And then I feel like they were people that were typically putting a lot of content out into the world, and they kind of had to pull back and they were not producing as much. I don't know if that's because AWS told them not to or kind of, push them away from that. But now it seems like in the last few months, all those people are starting to come back and put out their own content. It's not directly tied to AWS, but they are putting out their own content but like it's obviously AWS focused, right? So yeah. Are you seeing that as well? Do you think that is kind of some of the inner workings of this, or no?
What I'm seeing, like a few different things, is that there are people at AWS where if they're in a particular role, they're under restrictions in terms of what they can publicly share. And so they might have switched into a role that allows them to have that flexibility to share the content they want to share. So they might have already wanted to do the great work, but they were not allowed to. Usually AWS employees are under, they have to get their speaker cert and other things before they publicly do things. I don't know if that's been relaxed or if we just have very specific employees that are now trying to build their own brand, and they're just going out there and doing their own thing. What I'm noticing is a lot more non-developer advocates at AWS that are producing, I would call it, there's no nice way to put it, but just shallow content to drive up their own brand, because I don't know what's going in their heads, but maybe they're thinking about what they're going to do after AWS. And we've seen that a lot with select AWS employees where they were there for a year or two, then they left, and then they leveraged their ex-AWS brand to build out their reputation credibility to then drive themselves as a content creator. And I get that. I understand that. But my frustration is just the quality content, especially it's around certifications, because they're just driving this thing, telling everybody to do it, and it's not actually helping people, right? And then even still, they won't even drive them to free content like mine, so that they can at least mitigate the cost. And it's not about sharing just my stuff. It was like nobody's other stuff. And so that's where I have an issue with it. I love the DAs at AWS, like 99% of them, because they act in a very responsible way. They're community first. They do have their own brand, but I think that they are they understand what's important. And then we have these other rogue AWS employees that are just like making me angry. There's an AWS employee that I think they're on the DevRel team, and they used to share I would say borderline exam dump websites, because they just didn't know what they were doing, and they're just trying to share. They're like, oh, this place is part of the APN network. I'm like, that doesn't matter. It's so easy to be part of the APN. I was telling them, like, these practice exams, they look like mine or others that I've seen, and you shouldn't be sharing them. And then they get mad at me, but now they're like a large influencer on Instagram, and they're like top 50, under 50 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But I remember this kind of stuff, and other content creators remember this stuff, and we don't like it. And we call it cloud grifting, which is this idea that, whatever they tell them to themselves, that they have to, it doesn't matter what they do as long as they can get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's, not even, it just feels like, especially around like this last reInvent, something that I noticed, it's kind of in lines with this, is all the messaging, not just from people at the conference, but outside of it. Everyone that I follow that works for any of these big CSPs, they were sharing all of the AWS specific trainings. Like you said, it's like all these new skill badges. I have seen so much stuff with all these skill badges and pointing to Skill Builder and like all these very specific things that only they're creating. And I don't ever see, like you said, I don't ever see them advertising anyone else that creates content.
And when Skill Builder came out, like I was ready to just give them content, like free content. And I thought it was a great idea that we could pull in the community and crowdsource content from both AWS and everybody. But that was closed doors, and they had particular intentions for it. We don't know the drivers behind it, like whose boss's boss decides what they're doing. I'm not saying it's malicious, but I'm just saying that I think it's bad for the community. I don't know if they're internally told that they're supposed to share it, or if it's just, people are sharing it because they don't have their own content, and they're just driving content that they know that AWS will like and allows them to build their own brand. I'm not sure what it is, but it is very frustrating.
Oh man. Yeah, you're hitting on so many things here. Like, as somebody who makes content, it's I have to like pull myself back from jumping right in along with you, because we could spend an hour just on this commiseration, and we should later after the show perhaps. But you're absolutely right. So I used to work at Cisco, and I was helping with, I would do a lot of help with the exams there, exam creation and stuff. And, a lot of people don't know about this, but like learning at Cisco is, they're like, what's the word I'm looking for? They're considered to be revenue generating. Like, they're actually supposed to make money, for Cisco, right? A lot of people don't know that, right? They think it's an enablement, yeah. So the point I'm making, though, is that, because of that, there's a lot of pressure internally to drive to the official stuff, and to drive, to push it, so the reason I mentioned that is not anything to do with Cisco, right? But I kind of wonder, does AWS or the other CSPs have kind of a similar setup where they're kind of being driven to actually turn a profit with their certification systems? And this is not an excuse. This is not a free pass or an excuse for any of them, right? But because at the end of the day, things like the AWS Community Builders program and the Azure version, GCP version, whatever, they're all community driven. It's basically free advertising for AWS, right? The community, all the community builder type programs for all the CSPs are free advertising for them, and getting the community involved is a huge deal. So it's I guess the long story short is that I think that they need to do a better job balancing, the exactly. I mean, all of us on this call, I think, are community builders, right? They need to do a better job balancing, the pressures of maybe having to turn a profit on their certification program with the supporting of essentially people who are giving them essentially free advertising, free content, like you mentioned, Andrew. So,
well, and we don't know if what they're doing is revenue generating or not. Like, what are the drivers? And it's been asked by a lot of folks just even this week. And it was Heroes were like, what's the drivers? Why are they doing this, and for what purpose? And we don't know. But yeah, I would just say that, out of every other company, the only one I've never been able to talk to directly is training certifications at AWS. Not allowed to talk to them. They don't want to talk to me. And it's been like 6 years, and I'm just kind of like, I'm done there. There's other, again, I just do feel that for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because it's because of all the overturn, because of the layoffs or things like that, but I'm just seeing, or maybe because our industry is becoming more mainstream, and because the food crisis and the housing crisis and everything's becoming so hard that everyone's desperate to get into tech. But I do feel that we are getting a lot more folks out here that are trying to be the person selling the shovels. And we identified AWS employees as doing that, but I do feel that we have more community members that are doing that. And I always look at new content creators not really understanding the space, and I usually don't whack them over the head unless they are very consistently doing something that is not looking very honest for the community. But there was that book that came out recently, and I was just I don't mind that we had a bunch of people that came together to create a book and to share their backgrounds, but it frustrates me when it says cloud career journeys, but it's all AWS employees. Like, why not just call it AWS employees? And why does it have to be backed by like four large companies that teach certification content? And that's fine. Like, if they want to partner with them, like, I don't understand why it had to be integral into the book. My concern is more like, I fundamentally think that there is a serious issue with certification content in its current state. Certification content, it does not produce the result that, like, what's a certification supposed to do? It's supposed to certify that you can do the thing that you can do.
Right.
But if nobody is hiring based on that, then the certification does not serve its purpose. And so, to me, certifications in the current state are fundamentally flawed because the people that are creating it are not creating those mechanisms around it to make it valuable. It's and again, it's the responsibility of AWS, Azure, GCP. They're the ones that are making them. So I can't set the bars. They have to set the bars. But it's like these certs either have to go away, they have to mean something, and so that means it requires an adjustment, or we need to find some kind of middle ground or alternate path. Or sorry, they should just be honest about what they actually effectively can do and put big disclaimers on it. Because if it is, it's just like, and I always say this all the time, if you want to take certifications and you just want to have a goalpost and you just want to have a roadmap and that's what you want to use, you can use that. But let's talk about those deficits and understand that, like, these things are written as if, like, product marketers are like, let's teach you about every little feature of our product. And that nobody hiring really cares about that level of knowledge. They really want to have all those in-between skills and troubleshooting skills, plus whatever that is. And these certs are never going to validate or deliver on that. And that's kind of my frustration there. But that ties back to why I was saying, like, when I see Cloud Clear Journeys, they're saying here's all of our stories, and the best way to get in there is certifications. And that just kind of gets me angry. I make certifications. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I make money. And it makes me mad to think, like, that's the messaging that we're sending out on broadcast. And if I hadn't seen that they put it on a Jumbotron in New York, I wouldn't have said anything. But as soon as you get to that level of broadcasting that stuff, then I'm going, well, I'm going to say something. And some people don't like me for it, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've probably all had those several individuals that we've come across with in our IT career paths that are some of the smartest people you've ever met, and you're like genuinely amazed by the level of knowledge they have in their mind, and they don't have one certification, like not a single one. And so I think it's like, I like your emphasis on the fundamentals, and I think the difficult part is just how to test for that, or if it's a certification, obviously it's testing for that, or how to actually analyze and judge people based on the merits that they have, I guess, in that regard. But I wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned before about specifically AWS and their relationship with the content creators, because obviously they have to be very aware that there are other people out there creating content that make a living on creating content based on helping people use their services, right? And I'm curious to get your opinion on the recent announcement where they just got rid of 5 certs, or what was it? It was 4 to 5 certs. And it seems like there was no notification out to any individual content creators out there. And does that just tie back to the lack of a true learner partner network type thing, or do you?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I know about certifications that nobody knows about that are coming out in the next 6-9 months with other providers. I'm not part of the community programs, but I'm indirectly partnered. And so I know that they're coming out because they know that I'm going to be a driver for these certifications when they come out. AWS, we used to kind of get a blog post and kind of get a heads up. And this just really caught everybody off guard. We were not expecting this stuff to happen. I think it was Adrian, who is another fellow content creator. That was the one that was really upset about it. I wasn't so upset about it because I looked at those 2 data certifications and I knew that stuff was going to be shifted over to the data engineer certification. And so that stuff could be repackaged. And I hadn't invested too much time into those certs. So, for me, it wasn't a big deal. But the SAP one, I mean, I'm not surprised it went. But, at the same time, it's we're trying to, again, create all this content to create drive behind it, and we can't even coordinate or plan things because things are not predictable. And that's not to say that other ones have not been predictable. So Oracle in the past has they released their certs and they changed it 3 times over in the span of 2.5 years, and then they had the shortest renewal times that made no sense, but it made sense for where they were in terms of their size and maturity. Providing that educational material and as a cloud provider. Google has caught me off guard a couple times where they reworked their certifications in less than 7 months, and I wasn't able to reset the exam. So I was kind of mad because I'd made all this content, and not because they changed it, but because I couldn't even go and reset it to do a quick update. So that's why I always fail exams. I have to fail exams. Otherwise, I might have been in a situation where I can't sit them if they unexpectedly update them. But for AWS to do this was a really big surprise because they've always been really good, not necessarily internally, but externally telling us when things change.
That's true.
Yeah.
In terms of life cycle and stuff, they've always put out announcements and stuff in the past. Very good, yeah. So Microsoft is I would say Microsoft is they're always changing things. So, I mean, you're just kind of used to it. They're always fiddling with things, but it's not like they'll completely change an exam. I mean, at one point, they changed from text specific certs to role based certs, but that was a long time ago. And I would just say that every 3-4 months, every 2 months, I don't know, they'll keep tweaking their exam guide outline, but it's not so radical that it's going to throw everybody off course, except for when they rename Azure AD to Microsoft Entra ID. No one liked that. So
people love that one.
Yeah, they love it. So
just to hit on that a little bit more, this reminds me now. And Andrew, I know you're not from a networking background, so
nope.
I know you don't know a lot about the Cisco networking certifications, but there's a guy named Wendell Odom that basically every single person knows, because it's the entry level networking stuff. He's got all kinds of material and has for many years.
He's got it on lock, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember I went to Cisco Live in 2019 and I met him, and we were talking about 2019 was a big deal because Cisco changed basically every single cert. Completely changed the blueprints for all of them. But I was talking to Wendell about this. They knew beforehand. So it just shows we come from a much different place where it's Cisco's so involved with the community and the training partners. They do podcasts with them. There's another guy, David Bombal, who routinely comes out with interviews with Cisco way before anyone else knows things, or they're announced exclusively with that. So it's weird. Like they just don't have that community element there.
I mean, like I guess the thing is, like, at AWS, each department can do whatever they want. So, and I love the community team at AWS. I think they're really, really good. But like each department at AWS does whatever they want. And so whoever's running the ship over there that's how they want to run it. Right. Mm-hmm. And why that is, I don't know. So
that's fair. There's a few other things I wanted to get to, because we can really chase this rabbit all the way back to its hole, and I want to try to stay a little bit on target. So we talked about basically like what, and I have some thoughts about this too, but we talked about this about like should certs be like the way that people learn, and of course your answer is kind of a resounding no. Well, having said that, what is the goal, or what should be the goal of cloud training? And you've already kind of covered about, I was going to ask as well, like kind of how we missed the mark, or if we're missing the mark on it, but I think you've kind of covered that part. So let's talk a little bit, let's switch it around and say, okay, so what should the goal of cloud training be?
So my process is to work backwards and say, what do companies want? And so I've been talking to recruiters, companies that do staff augmentation. I've been talking to director of engineering, CTOs. And at the end of the day, it's yes, you do need to learn, let's say, Snowflake, but you need to know how to implement it within an ecosystem with a team, right? So, if you come in and you learn and isolate in something in particular, like Terraform, that's not going to matter if you don't know how to use Terraform with GitOps, and you don't have any programming chops, and you've never used Jira before, and you've never been in a stand-up before. And this is I think this is becoming a major issue more recently, just because of the flood of people coming into tech. And, not everybody's been around here for 15, 20 years. They weren't around when Git first came out, and we were all learning at the same time and things like that. And so, maybe certifications were less of an issue back then. But now, we need to bring forth these skills, and we need to test people on this stuff. Microsoft used to actually have you go into machines and do stuff, and they would actually have somebody watch you do it. And it wasn't necessarily a fail or pass on if you absolutely got it right or wrong. It was like somebody was actually judging you. And that was a real qualifier. And yes, it wasn't role-based. It was like specific to whatever it was, whether it was like virtual desktops or whatever it was. But, it was a much different experience in terms of evaluating the person. And I think that the reason we've gotten away from that is just because it scales at cost when everything's multiple choice. And you can cram more about your product in there if you leave all the other stuff out. And other stuff is hard to evaluate and teach. And everybody has their own thing. But I would just say that, and it's like it is in my boot camps, but I like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to try to do it the production way, bringing coding in or whatever. But I don't know. Sorry. Yep.
No,
it's kind of, yep.
No, you had something great there. And I think I was trying to think of how to say it. And now I think I got it based on what you. So, okay. So first of all, let's not pretend that a certification program from a vendor is like at least 50, more like 80% marketing. It's a marketing push from that vendor. Yeah. That vendor wants you to understand their product. They want you to like their product. They want you to recommend their product. They want you to use their products, right? So one of the huge values that independent and I realize that a vendor and you kind of got me now thinking about the whole why bring it all in-house thing again. One of the good things that an independent developer of certification content or whatever like yourself does is two things. One is exactly what you just said, right? Go find out, beyond the product itself, how the product is being used in the real world. So, and then include that. Like that's something a vendor's never going to do, right? The vendor's going to be focused on their own product, right? And then the second thing is like, I just like lost my train of thought there for a second.
Well, let's just talk about the things about what they use. But you know what? sometimes AWS uses things that aren't their own products. So for example, the AWS, I still think it is, the AWS website that you go to, AWSAmazon.com, isn't served by CloudFront. It's served by Fastly. And the reason it's served by Fastly is because Fastly is fast and they need it to bust the cache as fast as possible. So they don't necessarily always use their internal products, but for whatever reason, they don't talk about that like in their certs. They don't even talk about the fact that they don't use it. And then there's if there's competing services, like everybody uses Active Directory, right? And not everybody, but a lot of organizations do. And sure, AWS has some kind of offering in there for their directory service, but they're never going to talk about what it really looks like. And so that's where we're running into issues. And that I think is something that independent creators can do, because we're not drinking the Kool-Aid. And we can say whatever we want to a certain degree, if depending on what kind of relationship we want to have with these providers.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just remembered the second thing was
Yep.
the other thing is, because you can do this whole ecosystem thing that vendors can't do, you can bring a kind of a level of a level of value to someone taking your content that or your content, or just any third party developer's content that they can't get from that vendor's official content, which is that other look at their product in context, I guess. Sorry, it took me forever to actually remember that.
And the thing is, I can go and when I'm talking about Azure, and let's say I'm really good at AWS, I can be like, hey, I'm a developer. I have my developer hat on, and I'm using AWS. And I can go in here and go, yeah, I'm using Azure, and I'm finding that storage accounts is like an umbrella service, and it's completely laid out differently. But here's how I'm going to help you bridge your knowledge from AWS to Azure, and I can comparatively talk about them. Google kind of tried to do this. They would have kind of like if you're coming from AWS to over to or AWS over to Google, or Azure over to Google, but they still couldn't directly talk and compare the services. So they would just say IAM is where you manage, your identities, and they say, and over here we do it in here, but they couldn't put them side by side and compare them, right? And I think that's extremely valuable if you want to get people to move into your cloud or stuff like that. And so, Google could use me as they say, well, we're not allowed to say it, but you can say it. And they could, I'm not saying they're encouraging me, but they could encourage me to do that, because, I'm a proxy to do that. And that's actually how these companies should use us and work with us. But they don't necessarily do that.
And there's, I think the CSPs have kind of started to show at least some entrance, or at least some acknowledgement that multi-cloud is definitely a thing now.
Very
people are
slowly
definitely participating in multi-cloud environments. So if anything, if independent creators are going to take that burden to create all those interdependencies in their content, say I'm maybe making a course that teaches you how to use code pipeline, but I also am going to include all these Git fundamentals, these CI/CD fundamentals. If you're going to create all that and you're going to own that, they should. How does that look bad for them? They should be helping you hand over fist. I feel like, because that is the gap that they aren't they aren't addressing, right? Because they can't, and they don't want to spend the money to get in bed with whoever that may be cooperating that, right?
Well, and remember, there was things like A Cloud Guru and Linux Academy, and they were big juggernauts because there was such a huge gap in that market that I don't know what their relationships with AWS, Azure, and GCP were, but I heard stories, and I think that they don't want to have to deal with a big juggernaut. But I'm just going to tell you, it's not like that anymore. We have a more diverse crowd of content creators, and I do feel that these teams can work with us. But for whatever reason, whether it's legal, whether it's just somebody sitting on top of a high chair just doesn't want to do it. It's interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you say they're sitting in a high chair. Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Throwing their food on the floor.
I was thinking more like those kitchen chairs. I don't know.
Very tall kitchen chair. Yeah.
But if you want to picture them as a baby,
it's a baby.
as a baby, just throwing stuff. That's fine. That's fine too. I'm sure they're going to want to work with me after this, right? Well, it's hard. It's hard. Like again, there are companies out here again that I'm able to work with, and I respect them, and they don't always do the things that I think are best. But they go, at least I know they go, yeah, there's reasons for it, and they don't always make sense, and just understand that this is what we're working with. And I go, okay, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get it, and they're doing the best that they can do under their circumstances.
Yeah.
But when you have no communication, then it's a different story, and I don't feel bad. And as soon as they start talking to me, my tune will change, because I'll go, okay, we're working together, we're going in a better direction. But until then, I don't care. And right now, it's like saying this stuff could cause a lot of people stress, because people are getting overturned, and I already know, like, these people are hearing me, even if they're not talking to me. So I don't tell you, it's easier to talk to me in private than it is for me to talk out loud by myself. So it's their choice.
Totally agreed on that one. All right, so we touched on this a little bit. I wanted to ask this or talk about this a little bit. Certifications used to be, so when certifications were first introduced, like, just go back to like the first certifications, if you will, or specifically even the first tech certifications. Certifications used to be a way to validate knowledge that you already had, right? Like, so certification, the value of a certification was that someone who was certified had, already had years of experience. And because of that, they were able to take this certification, pass it. And so you could believe by proxy trust, of this vendor or of this organization, that this person was accomplished and able to perform whatever task that they're certified to do. Right now, when it became, I say when it became, but I don't know if this is when it happened or obviously what the impetus was, but at some point it became more of a training program, like you will take this training and then you will get certified and then you will get the job doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts about, I guess, that shift? Or do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it is? I get the feeling you probably don't think it's a good thing, based on what you said before.
Because it creates it's like printing money, because the idea is that people are going to go through it, and no matter what, whether they're good or bad, they have the means to get through. And I mean, mostly, again, it comes back to how they are doing the validation, which is multiple choice. Multiple choice is not necessarily bad, but the way they're engineered, it's like identify and think and whatever. My family business was computer repair, and one way we could tell whether somebody was good or not to hire was if they had their A+ certification. And there's people that had skills, they could do stuff, but if they had skills and they had their A+, then we knew they had a good foundation to not only have the practical skills, but be able to do a lot more. And so that had value, right? Whereas we have people coming in and they don't have any skills. And they're just engineered to pass this very specific thing where it's all very product focused and doesn't have everything else in it. And so that's a problem. Now, 2016, 2018, cloud certifications made sense because at the time, a lot of companies did not understand how to move to the cloud. Just talking about going for your cloud certification was enough to get you a job. Not get you a job, but get you a job interview. Yeah. And, I think that we're well beyond that point, and things need to be a lot harder. Things need to be, we need real people actually evaluating folks. But even if we did, we have an even bigger problem, which is, I ran my boot camp, and it was like 6-7 months, and I graded so many people manually, and it was what's the Tough Mudder or American Ninja or whatever. Literally, there was real failure, and every week people were dropping out, and so people that made it to the end legitimately could do the work, and they either came from nothing and they turned themselves into something. But for the most part, it's even though I did that, these companies are going, yeah, okay, but where's your 3 years experience? right? And they're not budging on it. And it's like they're just comfortable with the way they have their mechanisms for validation. And it's so heartbreaking to see people transform and to become capable, skilled people that can do the work. And I will really want to connect them with those jobs, but I don't have the hiring partners and the things like that. And I'm going, okay, well, even if if certifications don't work and projects don't work, what do we do?
Yeah,
do you know
what do you do?
Like, what do you do?
How do you stop the chicken and egg problem of that, you know?
And those same people that are, you know, so strict about those 3-year requirements are the ones saying about all the skills gap that we have. And it's like, this could solve so many of those issues. If you know,
I can't find anybody to hire, but it's probably, it's probably because you're not hiring anybody who doesn't have 5 to 10 years in this thing. Those people already have jobs, probably.
It's the guy riding the bike with the stick, just sticking it in there.
There's other mechanisms I think that they not just experience, but some that they might use. If their hiring managers are originally from in Canada, like University of Waterloo, I always use an example because a lot of hiring managers are from there, and a lot of companies in Toronto, they were alumni, so they'll bring in co-op students, and they know exactly how to evaluate those students, which is using this stuff, the cracking the coding interview, right? This stuff. It doesn't matter what you do. You could be updating the WordPress site. If you're coming in for the interview, you're doing algorithms. And, they were taught in school. They said, if you can't reverse a binary tree or whatever it is, like traverse a sorted binary tree or whatever, then you probably don't have good skills. And I mean, I get it. It works for them, and they are excluding other folks, but they are getting what they want. Why can't it be? Why can't Andrew Brown's bootcamp be enough, right? And so it has to do with how you build out that network and stuff like that. So there has to be some way we can fix that. But I'm still trying to figure that out.
It's the leak code score, right? You got to figure out how to get your version.
I mean, there's a trust thing there too, right? People trust a vendors and they trust a vendor certification. I went, full disclosure, right? I went through Andrew's Terraform bootcamp. And I mean, I knew Terraform pretty decently going into, but I actually didn't have nearly as much Git experience as I thought I did. Because he put it, I actually learned a shit ton about Git.
I didn't know I was throwing people for a loop. I just and so that was really interesting because I'm going to run a Git bootcamp, but I did not realize that there was so many people that have 15 years experience, but because they're not in the developer space,
that's it.
You know what I mean? It's not like it's just you don't know, right? Like you have no idea of that ecosystem.
I don't use it, so it was awesome, right? Actually.
All 3 of us, yeah.
But GitOps.
Speak for yourself.
GitOps is super useful for infrastructure and things like that. So there's definitely synergies, but or there's things I probably shouldn't have put in the boot camp, but it was the second week we did. We wrote our own Golang provider.
Yes, we did.
You know what I mean? So people said "Hey, Andrew, did you really have to put that in there?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I just kind of think that we need to really push people as hard as we can to not to break them, but to get them uncomfortable and even if they fail, to get new exposure. Whereas certifications can't do that. Do you know what I mean?
No, it was good.
Yeah, I remember we were chatting with Chris Williams about that, and he was just like, "Yeah, we got into this boot camp and we just started writing our own provider and go." And I was like, "Jesus, man!" I was like, "I've never even considered doing that." But at the same time, it made me realize, on the back end, I know at a very basic level how Terraform providers work, right, and what they're interacting with. But building one, I think that would actually be very beneficial for me to understand probably 10 things that I've experienced in Terraform in the last 2 weeks. I would probably understand a little bit better if I knew how the provider was built, right?
Well, and I think my goal wasn't to make you good at building providers. It was just more I'm going to show you, let's open it up. Let's look at the inside, and hopefully something connects, and you'll carry that forward. And that was the real component of it. And for me, I think that's where value is created for folks, because if they don't understand the mechanisms of the release, how are they going to build those troubleshooting skills, right? Yeah. Otherwise, it's just it's just like a closed box. You don't know. You know what I mean?
The context is what I appreciated about the whole boot camp. Like you had been saying the whole, this whole show that we've been doing, right? Just learning something in a vacuum, sure, multiple choice, right? Type of question, right? Yeah, okay, that's fine, but you need to learn it, like what you're actually going to be doing with it in the real world once you're done with it, and you're not only going to be using that product, or you're always going to be part of an ecosystem. You're always going to be using it alongside of the thing. So, I thought it was hard as hell, but
beginner boot camp, by the way. That was my beginner boot camp.
That was the beginner boot camp.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's like, Andrew, you can make it easier, make more money. I'm like, I know, but I just feel like I got to throw a few things in here.
Oh my god, hesitate to do a shill there, but like the quote unquote value was like off the charts, dude. It was nuts.
$50 or free, and it just pains me when I see like people charging $1,000 to learn the cloud practitioner.
It was nuts.
I had a Canadian come to me the other day, and they're, I'm taking this thing, and they're paying $5,000 for $1,000 per each cert, and they're going, yeah. So I think that I'm going to become a cloud. I read all the job descriptions. I think cloud architect is for me, and I'm targeting for September 2024. And they're like, and I'm just working on my cloud practitioner, just working on that one. I'm not from a tech background. Right.
Yeah.
And I go, and I have to say, I'm like, just so you know, that's great ambition, but generally takes about 3 years, hard work to possibly get your first role. And the role you're targeting is not an entry level role, and certifications are a possible path, and that's great that you're doing them, but it's not the most optimal path, and you got a lot of pain in front of you. But just in case they prove me wrong, I'm like, you might be special. I don't know, but that's the thing. And they go, okay, well, when's your next boot camp coming out? So I need to add a project to my resume. And I'm like, look, I just want you to know I did a boot camp, and I feel that a lot of people got value out of it. They upskilled, but it didn't necessarily help them get a job. And if you have those certifications and project to show your experience, it'd be better if you were to go and try to get experience. Go to a nonprofit. Go to any company. Go find an accountant that needs a secure Dropbox, like a secure way of dropping files. Like that's things like my accountant asked me, like, "Hey, can you make?" We're like, "No, we don't. I don't have time for that." And so add real experience, because the only thing I hear from recruiters and companies and everyone's like, we want to see real experience. We don't trust anything but real experience. We've seen too many projects. We've seen too many certifications. We've seen people with gold jackets and they can't do the work. We need better trust from these folks. And they go, okay, yeah, I hear you. But yeah, when's your next boot camp? I'll pay for it. I'm like, maybe in March. I gotta feed my kids,
Yep, I get it.
You know what I mean?
We did an episode last year about kind of the hopes and dreams being sold by some of this grift out here, selling these boot camps, selling these hopes and dreams to people that are just trying to make better life for themselves. So, yeah, we have lots of thoughts about that.
Still relevant a year later.
Yeah, and always will be relevant. Let's not joke ourselves, right? So yeah, we need to. All right, so we're just about out of time. Probably need to wrap it up. So let's see. Any final thoughts that you want to share, Andrew?
Yeah, so I'll be running some cloud certification boot camps coming up here, and if you're really looking to get those certifications to get it on your resume to get that job, look out for those boot camps. I would just say that if you want to do certifications, I'm not going to stop you. Everybody wants to do them. I'm going to do the best to provide them at the lowest to zero cost. If you got to pay, at least give me the money so that I can make content that is going to be beyond certifications, because that's what I would really love to do. Some people, they have to go through it to find out. And if you do waste a bunch of money and you still need a free resource, I'll be there. I just hope people can make that transition and make that change that they really want in their lives, and hopefully it helps them. And I would like it if they like tech too. You know what I mean? Yes, money's great. I get it. But it's going to help you if you like it long term, because it's not a one and done thing. It's a lot of work. It's so much work to
treadmill forever.
Yeah. No lie.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle. If you don't like it, If you take one of my boot camps and you don't like it, then go take a trades.
All right, that's awesome. Chris?
No, all good. Yeah, I think that's great messaging. I'm excited to see what feedback we get from this episode. How are you feeling about certifications? Let us know. Let Andrew know as well. I'm sure he wants to have a chat about it. But yeah, dude, thanks for coming on. I think this has been great.
Yeah. Alex, bring us home.
Yeah, I don't have any questions that aren't going to result in like another 30 minutes. So
all right.
I'm gonna I'll leave it be. I think we covered a lot of good things. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Andrew. This is great.
Yeah, I definitely think we could have kept going, and there's a lot more meat on the bone to talk about. So we'll have to have Andrew back soon. Thanks again for coming on, Andrew, and spending your time with us tonight. Appreciate it. For all the listeners, if you like what you heard, please, if you haven't already, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, like our YouTube channel. Buy our board game. It's out by Milton Bradley. Next,
Not a bad idea.
And so we'll see you on the next episode of Cables to Clouds. Hi everyone, it's Tim, and this has been the Cables to Clouds podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to us in your favorite podcast catcher, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for our YouTube channel to be notified of all our new episodes. Follow us on socials at Cables2Clouds. You can also visit our website for all the show notes at cables2clouds.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.